I stood in my parents' dining room, surrounded by twinkling lights and the scent of cinnamon, watching my life unravel in real time. The beautiful holiday table set with our family china couldn't mask 20 years of tension beneath the surface. No one knew that beneath my simple sweater and modest jewelry hid the truth of my success. As gifts were exchanged, Uncle James handed Logan an envelope meant for me. My brother's face reddened as he read the financial statement showing my $28 million net worth. His coffee mug shattered against the wall. My mother screamed accusations of betrayal and deceit. My father just stared, his expression shifting from shock to something darker. This Christmas would change everything. Growing up in our middle-class Connecticut suburb, I learned early that my place in the family ranked second to Logan. From the day he was born when I was 5 years old, my parents made their preference obvious, not through words, but through 1,000 small choices that built my understanding of my worth. When Logan started Little League Baseball at age 7, Dad became assistant coach, attending every practice and game. That same year, I qualified for the regional science competition, but Dad couldn't take time off work to drive me there. Mom ended up reluctantly taking me, complaining about the wasted Saturday the entire 40-minute drive. I won second place. My certificate hung on the refrigerator for 3 days before disappearing, while Logan's participation trophies claimed permanent positions on the living room mantel. For my 10th birthday, I received practical gifts, new school clothes, and a desk lamp for studying. 2 months later, Logan's birthday brought a new bike, a Nintendo system, and a weekend trip to Six Flags. I taught myself not to expect equality, focusing instead on academics where I could control the outcome through my own efforts. "Bria, you're just naturally smart," my mother would say whenever I brought home straight A's. "You don't need as much support as Logan does. He struggles more than you." This became the family narrative. Logan needed more, deserved more, simply because he achieved less. When I turned 16, I hoped to get driving lessons like my friends. Instead, my parents explained they were saving for Logan's future. "He'll need a reliable car for his social life," Dad explained. "You're so focused on studies, you probably won't go out much anyway." I worked weekends at the local library to save money for driving school, eventually buying a 15-year-old Honda with $2,000 I'd saved over 2 years. Meanwhile, on Logan's 16th birthday, he received a 3-year-old Jeep Cherokee, custom-painted his favorite color. The pattern extended to our education. While I attended public school, Logan was enrolled in Westfield Academy, an expensive private school known more for its networking opportunities than academic rigor. "It's an investment in his future," Mom explained when I questioned the disparity. "You're doing fine without the extra help." I graduated valedictorian of my public high school class. My speech thanked teachers who had believed in me. From the stage, I could see my parents checking their watches, half listening. They had scheduled Logan's baseball banquet for that evening, worried he might feel bad watching my academic recognition. They left immediately after the ceremony, missing the awards presentation where I received scholarships totaling $12,000. Not enough for the college of my dreams, but a start. That night, after the quiet celebration dinner I made for myself, I was searching through our home office for a copy of my birth certificate for college applications. In the back of the filing cabinet, I found a folder labeled Family Matters containing papers I'd never seen before, legal documents from when I was an infant, divorce papers, partially filled out but never filed. I read through them with growing horror. Mom had been ready to leave Dad shortly after I was born. The documents referenced his affair during her pregnancy, his initial rejection of me, his claim that I wasn't his daughter, a paternity test proving I was, their decision to stay together for the baby, followed by years of underlying resentment. Logan had been their fresh start baby, the child they both fully wanted and cherished. The revelation hit me like physical pain. I wasn't imagining the favoritism. I was paying for a marital crisis I'd never caused, bearing the weight of resentments that began before I could form memories. The unfairness burned so deeply I couldn't breathe. I carefully returned the papers exactly as I'd found them and went to my room. That night, I made a vow to myself. I would build my own life, my own success, without their support or approval. I would never again measure my worth against what they were willing to give me. As my classmates prepared for prestigious universities with their parents' blessing and financial support, I enrolled in community college while working 30 hours weekly at a local insurance company doing data entry. My parents seemed relieved at my practical choice, immediately focusing on Logan's baseball recruitment visits to colleges neither of us could academically qualify for. My tiny apartment in the less desirable part of town became my sanctuary during those community college years. I worked as a bank teller in the mornings, took classes in the afternoons, and waited tables at night. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. While Logan partied through his freshman year at State University on our parents' dime, I was building something no one could see yet. During my second semester, I enrolled in Professor Amelia Winter's economics class. Unlike most instructors who barely notice the exhausted students rushing in from jobs to night classes, Professor Winters saw something in me. After I aced her midterm exam, she asked me to stay after class. "You have an extraordinary mind for patterns, Bria," she said, reviewing my test. "The way you approach the market fluctuation problem shows intuitive understanding most graduate students haven't developed." I shrugged, uncomfortable with praise after years without it. "I just see the connections. It doesn't feel special." "That's exactly what makes it special," she insisted. "You see what others miss because to you, it's obvious." Professor Winters became my first true mentor. She helped me secure a merit scholarship that covered my remaining community college tuition and introduced me to financial modeling software. Under her guidance, I developed an algorithm that could predict certain market trends with remarkable accuracy. What started as a class project evolved into the foundation of my future. After finishing my associate's degree, Professor Winters helped me secure admission and a partial scholarship to complete my bachelor's in business at the State University's main campus. I continued refining my algorithm, applying it to small personal investments made with my meager savings. $500 grew to $1,500, then $4,000. I documented everything, building a performance record few could dismiss. I lived on ramen and worked through holidays while Logan dropped out of college after 3 unsuccessful years. My parents called to lament how the system had failed him and their decision to support his new career selling cars at a dealership owned by Dad's friend. They never asked about my studies, or noticed I'd stopped coming home for breaks because I couldn't afford the bus ticket. Upon graduation, while my classmates pursued traditional jobs, I took an enormous risk. Using $10,000 in savings and small loans from Professor Winters and 2 other faculty members who believed in my work, I started Horizon Analytics, operating from a converted storage room in a rundown office building. The first year nearly broke me. I worked 18-hour days, took consulting gigs to keep the lights on, and pitched my services to skeptical investment firms who saw only a young woman without Ivy League credentials. For every 20 rejections, I received 1 tentative opportunity. I made those opportunities count. When my algorithm successfully predicted the downturn in housing construction 6 months before the major indicators showed trouble, people started paying attention. A boutique investment firm took a chance on my services. Their portfolio outperformed projections by 32%. More clients followed. By year 3, I had 6 employees and had moved to legitimate office space. By year 5, Horizon Analytics was managing over $100 million in investments and had expanded into international markets. Through it all, I maintained a personal policy: live simply, reinvest aggressively, and tell no one in my family about my success. When my parents called, which became increasingly rare, I described my work vaguely as doing okay with my computer job. They never asked for details, quickly shifting conversations to Logan's latest promotion at the dealership or his new apartment. At family gatherings, I wore simple clothes and drove my still-functioning Honda, now over 10 years old. No one noticed. No one asked. The turning point came during the financial crisis. I received a panicked call from my mother one Tuesday evening. "The bank is threatening foreclosure," she said without preamble. "Your father's retirement account has lost 40% of its value, and we're 3 months behind on the mortgage." My parents had refinanced their house to help Logan cover gambling debts he'd hidden from everyone. Now they stood to lose their home. I listened silently as my mother lamented their bad luck, never acknowledging the poor financial decisions that led them there. "Have you talked to Logan?" I asked finally. Maybe he could help. I knew he couldn't. The dealership was struggling, and Logan had been demoted twice for poor performance. "We wouldn't dream of burdening him," my mother replied instantly. "He's going through such a difficult time already." After we hung up, I sat in my office overlooking the Boston skyline, considering my options. Despite everything, I couldn't let them lose their home. Through a series of anonymous donations structured through my company's charitable foundation, I paid off their outstanding mortgage balance. $70,000 that represented security for the people who had never provided the same for me. 3 weeks later, my mother called again, elated. "You'll never believe what happened. Logan found some government program to help homeowners in trouble. The bank called today saying, 'Our mortgage is current. Isn't your brother amazing?'" I felt something inside me harden as my mother detailed Logan's supposed heroics. He had done nothing but take credit for help he never provided. More significantly, my parents had never even considered I might be capable of assisting them. In their eyes, I would always be secondary, insignificant, compared to their golden child. That day, my motivation shifted. No longer was I building success to prove my worth to my family. I was building it for myself, creating a life so complete and self-sufficient that their approval became irrelevant. Every milestone thereafter brought satisfaction, not because it might someday impress them, but because it represented my triumph over the limitations they had placed on me. As Horizon Analytics expanded into its 7th year, I purchased a beautiful brownstone in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. Nothing ostentatious, but elegant and mine. I filled it with books and artwork I loved, created a home office overlooking a small garden, and for the first time, began to truly enjoy the fruits of my labor. Still, when visiting my parents for obligatory holidays, I maintained my facade of modest achievement. The spring after my 32nd birthday brought unexpected news. My great-uncle Walter, my paternal grandfather's brother, and one of the few relatives who had shown me consistent kindness throughout my childhood, passed away at 89. He had been a quiet, unassuming man who had worked as an engineer for decades. At family gatherings, he would slip me books about mathematics and science, encouraging my interests while everyone else focused on Logan. I attended his funeral, sitting quietly in the back of the small church. My parents and Logan arrived late, leaving immediately after the service for a golf tournament Logan couldn't miss. I stayed to help Walter's attorney sort through some of his belongings as requested in his will. "Your uncle wanted you to have these personally," the attorney said, handing me a steel briefcase and an envelope. Inside the case were various patents Walter had secured over his career for small technological innovations. The envelope contained legal documents naming me as the inheritor of his patent portfolio and a small account worth just under $1 million. "He always said you were the only one who would understand their true value," the attorney added. "He believed in your business acumen." Attached was a handwritten note from Uncle Walter. "Bria, these ideas may seem insignificant to others, but you'll see their potential. You've always had the gift of recognizing value where others see nothing. Make them work for you, as I never quite had the courage to do for myself." I wept openly, moved by his faith in me and the recognition I'd craved my entire life. Here was proof that someone in my family had truly seen me. The patents, seemingly minor modifications to existing technologies, became the foundation for a new division of my company. I established Walter Innovations as a subsidiary focused on licensing these technologies to manufacturers. Within 18 months, licensing agreements with 3 major technology companies generated over $7 million in revenue. As my business empire grew, so did the challenges. Breaking into the upper echelons of finance as a woman without family connections meant facing constant skepticism and casual sexism. During one potential client meeting, a senior partner at an investment firm directed all questions to my male CFO, despite my repeated answers. After the 3rd interruption, I stood quietly. "Gentlemen, I've realized this meeting is unnecessary. Your firm clearly isn't ready for the 34% returns my company has generated over the past 3 years. When you decide you can speak directly to the CEO rather than her male employee, our door will remain open. Until then, I wish you continued success with your current 12% portfolio growth." The following week, the The firm's founder called personally to apologize and request another meeting. They became one of our largest clients. I built my company culture in direct opposition to everything I'd experienced growing up. Employees were recognized based solely on merit. Our benefits package included generous parental leave regardless of gender, comprehensive health care, and educational assistance. We hired talented people overlooked by more prestigious firms because they lacked Ivy League degrees or came from underprivileged backgrounds. Meanwhile, my family continued their pattern of obliviousness. When I mentioned my company at Thanksgiving dinner, my father asked vaguely, "Are you still doing that computer thing?" before turning to Logan to discuss the luxury cars he was now selling at a high-end dealership. I noticed my brother's designer watch and new tailored suit, signs of prosperity that didn't align with his known salary. I wondered, but didn't ask. 2 weeks after that Thanksgiving, I received an unexpected business proposal through our company's general submission portal. Logan's name appeared on documents outlining a revolutionary investment opportunity in exotic car imports. The proposal requested $2 million in startup capital for a business that would import luxury vehicles with creative financing solutions. The vague language and inflated projections raised immediate red flags. I had our chief legal officer review the documents thoroughly. His assessment confirmed my suspicions. The proposal described what amounted to a money laundering operation for gambling enterprises, whether Logan realized it or not. The creative financing involved moving cash from unnamed overseas investors through multiple shell companies before purchasing vehicles at inflated prices. Rather than rejecting the proposal outright, I arranged for an anonymous assessment to be sent to Logan's home address, detailing the legal vulnerabilities in his plan and evidence of his potential partner's connections to gambling operations. I included copies of federal statutes regarding money laundering and conspiracy charges, with relevant sections highlighted. No signature, no company letterhead, just information that might save him from catastrophic legal consequences. 2 days later, Logan called our parents during their weekly dinner with me present via speakerphone. "Those stuck-up investors turned down my business plan," he complained. "Bunch of cowards afraid of real innovation. Dad, can you co-sign for a business loan instead?" I sat quietly as my father readily agreed to risk his retirement security yet again. Neither Logan nor my parents ever knew how close he had come to federal prosecution or that I had been the one to warn him away from the scheme. The pattern continued. Logan taking reckless risks, my parents enabling him, and me watching from the periphery, occasionally providing invisible safety nets none of them recognized. By my 35th birthday, Horizon Analytics managed over $5 billion in assets, while Walter Innovations generated consistent licensing revenue. My personal net worth exceeded $28 million. I purchased a small vacation home on Cape Cod, donated generously to educational charities, and established a scholarship fund at the community college where I'd started. All under different names, all without my family's knowledge. Each Christmas, I debated revealing my success, imagining their shock, and perhaps finally their recognition of my value. Each year, I chose silence, uncertain whether I wanted their acknowledgement anymore or if the truth would simply give them access to wealth they hadn't earned and wouldn't appreciate. The girl desperate for their approval had grown into a woman who questioned whether they deserved to know her at all. The invitation to Christmas dinner came, as it did every year, a perfunctory phone call from my mother 3 weeks before the holiday. "We're expecting you at 6 on Christmas Eve," she said, her tone making clear it wasn't really a request. "Logan's bringing his new girlfriend. She comes from money, so dress nicely." I almost declined. My company's holiday party was scheduled for the night before, and I had considered using exhaustion as an excuse to skip the family gathering. Something about my mother's comment about Logan's wealthy girlfriend pushed me to accept. After years of building walls between my professional success and my family's perception, curiosity compelled me to witness this latest chapter in Logan's life. I arrived at exactly 6 o'clock, parallel parking my 10-year-old Honda between my father's sensible sedan and Logan's bright red sports car. The contrast wasn't lost on me, nor was the deliberate choice I made each time I returned home, presenting as the struggling daughter rather than the successful businesswoman I had become. My mother opened the door, her critical gaze immediately assessing my outfit. I had chosen a simple black dress, quality material but nothing flashy, with minimal jewelry. "You could have made more effort," she sighed. "Logan's Melanie is wearing Versace." No greeting, no Merry Christmas, no acknowledgement of the crystal serving bowl I extended as a gift. Just immediate disappointment. I stepped inside, the familiar weight of inadequacy settling around my shoulders like an old coat pulled from storage. The living room had been decorated extensively, with a 12-foot tree dominating the space. Beneath it lay piles of beautifully wrapped presents, most bearing Logan's name. At 31, my brother was still treated like an excited child at Christmas, while my gifts typically consisted of practical items: kitchen towels, business casual blouses, gift cards to office supply stores. Logan sprawled on the sofa, his arm around a petite blonde wearing an outfit that indeed screamed designer labels. He barely looked up from his phone when I entered. "Hey, sis," he muttered, then returned to scrolling. My father emerged from the kitchen, martini in hand. "Bria, right on time as always, dependable to a fault." He delivered this with the same tone he might describe a reliable but unexciting appliance. He hugged me briefly, the scent of expensive scotch evident even at 5 in the evening. "Everyone, this is Melanie," Logan announced suddenly, as though remembering his manners. "Her family owns that big insurance company, National Security Life." Melanie smiled thinly. "Regional VP for the Northeast Division," she corrected. "Daddy's company, but I've earned my position." "Of course you have, sweetheart," Logan said dismissively before turning to me. "What are you up to these days, Bria? Still at that little data company?" "Something like that," I replied, the understatement of the decade sitting strangely on my tongue. Dinner proceeded with excruciating predictability. Logan dominated the conversation, exaggerating his accomplishments at the dealership, telling stories in which he always emerged as the hero. My parents hung on every word, occasionally prompting me with disinterested questions about that computer job before quickly returning attention to Logan. "We're considering buying the lake house," my mother mentioned during dessert, "the one we used to rent during summers. It's come on the market and we've always loved it." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we're considering it if the finances work out," he amended. "The retirement fund isn't quite where we'd hoped." Logan interjected, "I told you guys, once I get my end-of-year bonus, I'll help out. Sales are through the roof this quarter." I noticed the slight twitch in his left eye, a childhood tell that emerged whenever he lied. Whatever bonus he expected wouldn't be covering any lake house purchase. The dealership had been featured in the business section of the regional paper last month, announcing staff reductions amid declining luxury car sales. "What about you, Bria?" Melanie asked, the first direct question anyone had posed to me all evening. "Do you ever invest in real estate? Daddy says it's essential for wealth building." Before I could answer, my mother laughed. "Bria's not really the investing type. She's always been cautious, risk-averse." The irony of this statement, coming from the mother of a woman who had built a financial empire through strategic risk-taking, nearly made me choke on my pie. I swallowed carefully, then simply smiled. "I have a few modest investments." The doorbell rang, saving me from further conversation. My father rose to answer it, returning with my Uncle James, my father's older brother and the executor of Uncle Walter's estate. I hadn't seen James since the funeral 3 years earlier, and his appearance at the family Christmas gathering was unexpected. "Sorry to crash the party," James said, removing his coat. "I was in town meeting with clients and thought I'd drop off gifts in person this year." He carried a briefcase and a small bag of wrapped presents. My father looked slightly annoyed, but gestured toward the dining room. "We're just finishing dessert. There's plenty if you're hungry." James declined food but accepted coffee, settling into an empty chair beside me. He placed his briefcase on the table and withdrew a stack of envelopes. "Actually, I have something special for everyone this year. A bit of family financial planning, if you will." Logan perked up immediately. "Financial planning? Like investment tips?" "Something like that," James replied, his expression unreadable. He distributed envelopes to each person, hesitating slightly before handing mine to me with the faintest nod. The conversation shifted as James inquired about everyone's year. My parents detailed their upcoming expenses. The house needed a new roof, their healthcare costs were rising, and they were concerned about having enough for comfortable retirement. Logan boasted about his sales record but mentioned temporary cash flow issues preventing him from helping his parents as promised. "What about your bonus?" my father asked, frowning. "You said it would be substantial." Logan's expression flickered. "Slight delay there. Market conditions and all that. First quarter for sure." James turned to me. "And you, Bria? How's business?" The direct question from someone who might actually know the answer caught me off guard. Uncle James worked in financial services in New York. Had he connected the dots between Horizon Analytics CEO B. Reynolds and his niece? "Things are progressing," I answered carefully. "Steady growth." James smiled slightly. "I imagine so." He gestured to the envelopes. "Why don't we all open these together? Consider it my contribution to family transparency." My stomach tightened. The envelope in my hand suddenly felt dangerous, a potential explosion of my carefully maintained separation between family and financial reality. I watched as my parents opened their envelopes first, expressions shifting from curiosity to confusion as they reviewed what appeared to be a summary of their retirement accounts, complete with projections showing significant shortfalls. Logan tore into his envelope with the eagerness of someone expecting good news. His expression darkened instantly as he scanned the contents. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, waving the papers at James. "Why do you have my credit report? And loan applications?" James remained calm. As a financial advisor and family member, I became concerned about certain patterns I observed. "Your envelope contains a summary of your current financial situation, including credit card debt, personal loans, and 2 recent loan applications containing falsified income statements." The room went silent. Logan's face flushed deep red as he glanced nervously at Melanie, who was staring at his paperwork with growing horror. My parents looked stunned, my father's hand reaching for his drink. "You had no right," Logan sputtered. "Actually, these documents are public record," James replied evenly. "The loan applications came to my attention through industry colleagues concerned about potential fraud. I intervened to keep this matter private rather than reported to authorities." Logan grabbed my still unopened envelope. "What about Perfect Bria? Let's see her financial disaster." "Logan, that's not yours to open," James said sharply, but too late. Logan had already torn open the envelope, his eyes scanning the contents. The color drained from his face, replaced by an alarming purple rage as he processed the information before him. $28 million? He choked out. "This says Bria's net worth is $28 million. He threw the papers onto the table where they scattered like autumn leaves. Horizon Analytics and Walter Innovations, CEO and majority shareholder. His voice rose with each word. "You've been lying to us for years, pretending to be some struggling office worker while sitting on millions." My mother snatched up the papers, reading them with widening eyes before looking at me as though seeing a stranger. "Is this true? You have this kind of money and let us worry about retirement? About the house repairs?" "Let you worry?" I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "When have you ever worried about me? When have you ever asked about my career beyond dismissing it as that computer job?" "That's not the point," Logan shouted, slamming his hand on the table hard enough to make the china jump. "You've been hoarding wealth while watching us struggle. While I've been killing myself trying to support Mom and Dad." "Killing yourself?" I laughed without humor. "You've been living beyond your means on their support for years. That bonus you keep promising? We all know it doesn't exist." Logan grabbed his coffee mug and hurled it against the wall, dark liquid spattering like blood across the cream-colored paint. "You think you're so much better than me. Little Miss Perfect with her secret millions." My mother stood, her voice reaching a pitch I hadn't heard since childhood tantrums. "How could you do this to your family, Bria? We raised you. We gave you everything we could, and this is how you repay us? By hiding your success? By watching us struggle with bills while you live in luxury?" My father remained seated, staring at the financial summary with an expression I couldn't read. $28 million, he whispered. "My daughter is worth $28 million. Melanie looked between Logan and me, her expression calculating. Other relatives who had arrived for dessert began filtering in from the living room, drawn by the commotion. Within minutes, the dining room filled with extended family members reacting to the news of my wealth with emotions ranging from shock to immediate financial interest. "I always knew you'd be successful," claimed Aunt Susan, who had forgotten my birthday for 12 consecutive years. "We should discuss that business idea I mentioned last Easter," Uncle Phil suggested, despite us having never spoken about any business idea. Through the chaos, I caught Uncle James's eye. His expression held no apology, only quiet resolution. He had orchestrated this moment deliberately, exposing the truth I'd hidden and the pretenses my family had maintained. The question was, why now, and what was I supposed to do with the wreckage? "You sneaky, ungrateful little bitch." Logan's voice cut through the growing din of relatives' questions and comments. He stood shaking with rage, his designer shirt stained with spilled coffee. "All these years, I've been the one taking care of this family while you stockpiled money like some miserly spinster." Aunt Carol gasped at the language, but my mother made no move to correct him. Her eyes remained fixed on me, filled with accusation, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Calculation, perhaps. "Taking care of the family?" I repeated, rising slowly from my chair. Years of boardroom confrontations had taught me that the calmer I remained, the more authority I commanded. "Is that what you call it when Dad bailed you out of gambling debts 3 times? Or when Mom depleted her personal savings to cover your condo down payment?" Logan's face contorted. "That was temporary assistance during difficult transitions. I've paid them back in countless ways." "Name one," I challenged. He sputtered, looking to our parents for support. My father still sat motionless, staring at the financial documents as though they might transform before his eyes. My mother, however, shifted strategies with alarming speed. "Bria, honey," she said, her voice suddenly gentle, reasonable. "We're just shocked, that's all. You have to understand how this looks. We've been worrying about retirement, about healthcare costs. Your father's medication alone is $600 a month after insurance. We remortgaged the house to help Logan through some temporary difficulties, but he's always intended to help us once he's established." The abrupt pivot to financial concerns revealed priorities more clearly than years of therapy could have accomplished. Not "we're proud of you" or "what an accomplishment," just immediate calculations of what my money could do for them. "Did you know?" I asked my mother directly. "Did you ever suspect what I was building?" A flicker of something crossed her face. Guilt, perhaps. "We received some tax documents at the house years ago," she admitted reluctantly. "Before you changed your address. There were some significant numbers, but we assumed it was some kind of mistake." "Not a mistake," my father interjected, finally looking up from the papers. "We saw the company name. I looked it up. It seemed successful, but we thought perhaps you were just a regular employee with stock options or something. We didn't realize you were the founder and CEO." "You knew," I said flatly. "You knew I was doing well, and you still never asked about my career, never expressed interest in my work, never once considered that I might be able to help with financial concerns." "We didn't want to impose," my mother insisted. "You've always been so private, so independent." Logan snorted derisively. Translation: "They didn't think your little woman-owned business was significant enough to matter. Not like my real job selling actual products." An awful possibility dawned on me. "You were waiting," I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. "You knew I had some success, but you were waiting for me to volunteer my resources. You expected me to eventually offer money without being asked." The guilty expressions confirmed my suspicion. My parents had known about my early success, but had maintained the family dynamic of focusing on Logan, assuming I would eventually step forward with financial support while continuing to treat me as secondary. They had been playing a long game of emotional chicken, waiting for me to break and offer money to earn their approval. "Of course we expected you to help family," my mother said, as though this were self-evident. "That's what family does. We sacrificed everything for you children." "For Logan," I corrected. "You sacrificed everything for Logan. I put myself through school working 3 jobs. I built my company with no support from any of you. I didn't even get encouragement, let alone actual help. Now you're just being dramatic, my father said dismissively. We always encouraged your studies. Uncle James cleared his throat. Actually, Stephen, that's not entirely accurate. I've attended enough family gatherings over the years to notice the pattern. Bria's accomplishments were consistently minimized, while Logan received praise for basic achievements. It's one reason I thought this financial reckoning was overdue. Logan's rage found a new target. Stay out of this, Uncle James. This is between us. My sister has been lying to this family for years, and now she's trying to paint herself as some kind of victim. I'm not a victim, I said firmly. That's the point. I stopped being a victim the day I decided my worth wasn't determined by this family's recognition. I built something substantial, without your approval or support. I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer information to people who never bothered to ask. Semantics, my mother cried. You deliberately misled us about your circumstances. Like you misled me about mine? I asked quietly. I found the divorce papers, Mom. The ones from after I was born. I know Dad wanted to leave. I know you both stayed together for the baby, and then resented that baby for trapping you in a marriage you wanted to escape. The color drained from both my parents' faces. Nearby relatives murmured in shock. This family secret had never been acknowledged openly. You weren't supposed to see those, my father said weakly. Clearly. Just like I wasn't supposed to see that every gift, every opportunity, every ounce of attention went to Logan from the moment he was born. Your do-over, baby. Your fresh start. The child you both actually wanted. Logan looked between our parents, confusion replacing some of his anger. What is she talking about? My mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're getting completely off track. The issue here is that Bria has millions of dollars while letting her family struggle financially. After all we've done for her. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. Name one sacrifice you made specifically for my benefit. One time you put my needs above Logan's. Just one. The silence stretched painfully as my mother opened and closed her mouth, unable to produce a single example. Logan wasn't finished. He grabbed the financial summary again, waving it like an indictment. $28 million! Do you have any idea what that kind of money means? We've been pinching pennies, worried about Dad's heart medication, concerned about their retirement, and you've been sitting on a fortune. A fortune I earned, I replied. Every dollar came from my work, my ideas, my risk-taking. I started with nothing and built something valuable. What have you built, Logan? Besides debt and excuses? He lunged toward me, face contorted with rage. Uncle James and my father jumped up to restrain him as he shouted, You think you're so much better than me. You've always thought that. Looking down on me while Mom and Dad gave you everything. Gave me everything? I repeated incredulously. They gave you private school while I attended public. They bought you a new car while I saved for years to buy a used Honda. They paid for your college while I worked through community college. What exactly did they give me that constitutes everything? Logan struggled against the restraining hands. They gave you their love, their attention. Mom was always checking your homework, making sure you had what you needed for school. Dad was always bragging about your grades to his friends. I stared at him in genuine confusion. Is that how you remember our childhood? Of course it is. Poor Logan, not as smart as his perfect sister. Logan needs extra help, extra attention. Logan's struggling while Bria just succeeds at everything naturally. His voice cracked slightly. Do you have any idea what it's like growing up in the shadow of someone who makes everything look easy? The revelation hit me like physical impact. While I had perceived a lifetime of favoritism toward Logan, he had experienced the exact opposite. Somehow, we had each believed the other was the favored child. The dysfunction ran even deeper than I had imagined. My mother seized on this opening. See? We always tried to balance things between you two. Logan needed more practical support, while you needed more emotional encouragement. We did our best with limited resources. I might have believed this rewriting of history if not for the documentation of my life. The school records showing parent-teacher conferences attended for Logan but missed for me. The childhood photos where Logan was centered while I stood at the margins. The financial records of educational investments made drastically unequally. That's not balance, I said finally. That's not even close to balance. But it doesn't matter anymore. I built my life without your balanced support. I'm not angry about the past. I'm angry about right now, where your first reaction to learning about my success is calculating what it means for you financially, rather than feeling proud of what I've accomplished. Of course we're proud, my father protested weakly. No, you're not, I said with certainty. You're embarrassed that you backed the wrong horse. You invested everything in Logan's potential while dismissing mine, and now you're faced with the consequences of that choice. Logan broke free from the restraining hands and grabbed his car keys from the table. I don't have to listen to this sanctimonious bullshit. She thinks she's so perfect with her algorithms and her millions. Well, guess what, Bria? Money doesn't make you a good person. It just makes you rich. He stormed toward the door, Melanie following uncertainly behind him. Before leaving, he turned back, pointing at me accusingly. This family needed you, and you turned your back on us. Remember that when you're counting your money alone in your big empty house. The door slammed behind him with such force that an old family photo fell from the wall, its frame cracking on impact with the floor. Symbolic, I thought distantly. My mother began to cry, the theatrical sobs I remembered from childhood conflicts. Now look what you've done. You've driven your brother away on Christmas. Is this what you wanted? To destroy this family with your secrets? Uncle James intervened before I could respond. Carol, that's enough. The family was dysfunctional long before tonight. Bria simply stopped playing her assigned role. The room had emptied somewhat more tactful relatives, making excuses to leave as the argument escalated. Those who remained watched with the uncomfortable fascination of witnesses to a long overdue collision. My father approached me cautiously. Bria, surely we can discuss this rationally. Your success is wonderful, truly. We should celebrate it. He glanced at the papers still scattered across the table. And perhaps talk about how we move forward as a family. Your mother and I are getting older. Healthcare costs are rising. The house needs significant repairs. The naked financial appeal, disguised as reconciliation, told me everything I needed to know about where I stood. Not a daughter to be proud of, but a resource to be tapped. I think I should go, I said, gathering my coat. This isn't a conversation for Christmas Eve with an audience. You can't just drop this bombshell and leave, my mother protested. I didn't drop the bombshell, I reminded her, glancing at Uncle James. But I do think we all need time to process. As I moved toward the door, my mother called after me. So that's it? You're just going to abandon your family when we need you most? After everything we've done for you? I paused, hand on the doorknob. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I've been asking all night, and neither you nor Dad has given a single concrete example. Her silence was the final confirmation of a truth I had known, but never fully acknowledged. In their eyes, I had never been worth the investment they made in Logan. And now that the investment had failed to pay off, they expected me to cover their losses without receiving even the most basic recognition of my accomplishments. I'll be in touch after the holidays, I said finally. Merry Christmas. As I stepped into the cold December night, I heard my mother's voice rising again, demanding to know why Uncle James had revealed my secret, why he had ruined Christmas with his financial ambush. His calm reply carried through the partially open door. Someone had to break this cycle, Carol. Your children have been trapped in it for 30 years. I drove away from my childhood home feeling lighter than I had in years, despite the confrontation. The carefully maintained facade had finally cracked open, revealing the dysfunction beneath. Whether anything healthy could grow in its place remained to be seen. 3 days after Christmas, I sat in my office reviewing year-end reports when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Uncle James stood in the reception area, briefcase in hand, requesting a few minutes of my time. I welcomed him into my corner office with its view of Boston Harbor, offering coffee which he accepted gratefully. Quite different from your parents' impression of your little computer job, he observed, glancing around at the awards and business magazine covers framed on the walls, several featuring my photograph. Why did you do it? I asked directly. Why expose everything at Christmas dinner of all times? James set down his coffee cup deliberately. I've watched this family dynamic play out for 30 years, Bria. your parents enabling Logan while minimizing you. When Walter left you his patents, I began tracking your professional rise. Remarkable achievement, by the way. Truly extraordinary. Thank you, I said, the simple acknowledgement of my work feeling strangely significant after decades of indifference from my family. I kept waiting for the pattern to break naturally, he continued. For your parents to recognize your success, for Logan to develop self-sufficiency, for you to stop hiding your achievements. None of those things happened. Instead, the dysfunction deepened. Your parents began making increasingly desperate financial decisions to support Logan, depleting their retirement savings. Logan's sense of entitlement grew alongside his resentment toward you, and you built higher walls between your real life and your family identity. He leaned forward. Something had to change, Bria. Your parents are getting older. Their financial decisions have left them vulnerable. Logan shows no signs of developing responsibility. And you were becoming increasingly detached from the entire family, which might have been healthiest for you personally, but left questions about the future unresolved. So you decided to blow everything up? I asked, not angry but genuinely curious about his reasoning. I decided to force the conversation that everyone was avoiding, he corrected. Dramatic? Yes. But after 30 years of the same destructive patterns, subtlety seemed unlikely to succeed. I couldn't argue with his assessment. So what now? Logan isn't speaking to me. My parents alternate between guilt trips and financial appeals. 3 different cousins have sent me business proposals since Christmas. James smiled slightly. Now comes the hard part, establishing new boundaries based on truth rather than pretense. He opened his briefcase and removed a leather-bound journal. There's something else you should know. Walter wasn't the only family member who recognized your potential. The journal was dated 40 years earlier, its pages filled with my grandfather's handwriting. James explained as I paged through it. Our father, your grandfather, kept detailed records of family patterns he observed. He noticed that in each generation, certain children were elevated while others were diminished, usually based on parental projections rather than the children's actual qualities. The golden children rarely fulfilled expectations, while the overlooked ones often thrived once they escaped family dynamics. I paused at an entry describing my father's childhood, where he had been the favored son while James was considered less promising. The irony wasn't lost on me that my father had perpetuated the same pattern with his own children. Walter wasn't the only one who left you something, James continued. Several family members have been watching your journey. Cousins Margaret in Seattle and David in Chicago. Your great-aunt Elizabeth in Philadelphia. All successful in their fields, all somewhat distanced from the core family dynamics. I don't understand, I said, looking up from the journal. Walter created a tradition several generations ago, James explained. Identifying family members subjected to these patterns and providing support, sometimes financial, sometimes mentorship, always conducted quietly to avoid interference from those perpetuating the dysfunction. Walter mentored me after our father focused exclusively on your dad. I mentored Margaret when her parents dismissed her academic potential. We create alternate support systems outside the toxic patterns. The revelation stunned me. All these years I had believed myself alone in my experience, while a shadow network of family members had recognized and monitored the pattern. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked, a familiar childhood hurt surfacing despite my adult success. The intervention comes at different times for different individuals, James explained gently. Some need early support to escape destructive environments. Others, like you, demonstrate remarkable resilience and self-sufficiency. Walter watched your progress with immense pride. He believed you needed to build your strength independently before being brought into the larger awareness. He removed several business cards from his wallet. These are your cousins I mentioned. All successful in different fields, all sharing similar family experiences. Margaret is a neurosurgeon. David built a sustainable agriculture company. Elizabeth is a retired federal judge. They've been waiting to connect with you properly. The existence of this shadow family network shifted something fundamental in my understanding of my place in the world. I wasn't simply the overlooked child who had succeeded despite her family. I was part of a lineage of resilient individuals who had broken free from limiting patterns to build meaningful lives. "There's one more thing," James said, hesitating slightly. "Your confrontation at Christmas has triggered some unexpected responses. Logan showed up at my house last night." I tensed, imagining another angry outburst. What did he want? To talk. Really talk. Maybe for the first time. The shock of your success and his financial exposure seems to have created a crack in his worldview. He admitted to some gambling problems, acknowledged taking advantage of your parents' support. He asked questions about you, about your company. Real questions, not accusations. "That doesn't sound like the Logan I know," I said skeptically. "People can surprise us when their carefully constructed narratives collapse," James observed. "I'm not suggesting immediate reconciliation or trust, just noting that the disruption has created possibility for change." Later that day, I received separate texts from both parents. My mother's message was predictably emotionally manipulative. "Logan is devastated by your accusations. Please call him to apologize." My father's message was more direct. "Need to discuss financial planning. Your expertise would be helpful. Also, your mother found old school projects of yours she saved. Thought you might want them." The reference to saved school projects gave me pause. Had they actually preserved evidence of my childhood achievements? Or was this another manipulation to rewrite family history? I decided to test the waters. I called my father directly, expecting the conversation to immediately turn to their financial needs. Instead, he seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "Bria, I've been thinking about what you said, about not being able to name things we did specifically for you." His voice sounded older, less certain. "It's been bothering me because I want to believe we were fair parents." "And what have you concluded?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "That we weren't," he admitted after a long pause. "I found your old academic award certificates in the attic, dozens of them. First-place finishes, perfect scores, recognition letters from teachers. I don't remember attending most of those events." The simple acknowledgement nearly undid my professional composure. After decades of gaslighting about the preferential treatment of Logan, hearing my father admit the reality felt momentarily disorienting. "There's more," he continued. "I found financial records from those years. Logan's private school tuition was more than 4 times what we spent on all your educational needs combined. His sports equipment cost more than everything we ever bought for your academic pursuits." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm ashamed," he said simply. "Not just of the past inequity, but of my reaction when I learned about your success. My first thought wasn't pride in your accomplishment. It was calculation about how it might benefit our retirement. What kind of father thinks that way?" The crack in his defensive facade seemed genuine. Whether it represented the beginning of real insight or merely a tactical shift to access my resources remained to be seen. "I appreciate your reflection," I said carefully. "But rebuilding trust will take time and consistent change, not just acknowledgement of past patterns." "I understand," he replied. "Your mother is having a harder time with this. She still believes we did the best we could with what we had, but I'm willing to look at the evidence more objectively." After hanging up, I sat quietly processing the day's revelations, the shadow network of successful family members who had broken free of dysfunctional patterns. My father's tentative acknowledgement of favoritism. Logan's apparent moment of self-reflection with Uncle James. None of these developments erased decades of painful family dynamics, but they created small openings for something different to emerge. That evening, I received an email from a cousin I barely knew, Margaret in Seattle. The subject line read simply, "Welcome to the other side of the family." The message described her own journey of breaking free from limiting family expectations, building a medical career despite her parents' insistence that girls don't need advanced education. She wrote about Uncle Walter's quiet mentorship, about finding her voice, and eventually establishing healthier boundaries with her family of origin. "The hardest lesson," she wrote, "is recognizing that our parents and siblings may never fully see or validate who we truly are. The healing comes not from winning their approval, but from releasing our need for it." As I read similar messages from other family members who had traveled parallel paths, a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged began to lift. The isolation that had accompanied my journey lightened with the knowledge that others had walked similar roads. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. With this realization came a clarity about how to move forward, not with bitterness or retribution, but with clear-eyed boundaries and deliberate choices about the relationships I wanted to nurture. The little girl, desperate for her parents' recognition, could finally rest. The woman I had become no longer needed what they had never been capable of giving. 6 months after the explosive Christmas revelation, I hosted a gathering at my Cape Cod vacation home. The weather was perfect for early summer, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt water and flowering shrubs across the back deck where tables had been set for lunch. The guests represented a new understanding of family. Cousin Margaret flew in from Seattle with her wife and teenage daughters. David drove up from New York with his husband. Great Aunt Elizabeth, now in her 80s but sharp as ever, held court near the hydrangeas, regaling younger relatives with stories of her days on the federal bench. Uncle James arrived with a bottle of champagne and his longtime partner Robert, who I'd never met during family gatherings, but who had apparently been in his life for 15 years. The parallel secret lives we had all maintained to accommodate the core family's limitations now seemed both sad and absurd. Quite a different crowd from the Christmas dinner, James observed, surveying the lively gathering. More authentic, I agreed, though not entirely different. I gestured toward the end of the property where my parents stood somewhat awkwardly chatting with Margaret's wife. Their presence represented a tentative new beginning rather than a complete reconciliation. The months following Christmas had brought painful but necessary conversations. My father had committed to therapy, working to understand the generational patterns he had perpetuated. My mother fluctuated between defensiveness and genuine reflection, making small steps toward acknowledging the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamic. Their financial situation remained precarious due to years of poor decisions. Rather than simply writing checks to solve problems they had created, I connected them with financial advisors from my company, establishing a structured plan to stabilize their retirement with appropriate boundaries. The house repairs they needed were arranged through a contractor I trusted, paid directly rather than giving them cash they might redirect to Logan. Speaking of my brother, his journey had been the most surprising. The humiliation of Christmas night had triggered what he later described as hitting bottom. After years of gambling addiction hidden behind a facade of professional success, he finally sought treatment. Our relationship remained tentative, marked by cautious conversations rather than immediate closeness. He had declined today's invitation, not yet ready for larger family gatherings, but we had scheduled a private dinner later in the week. "Miss Reynolds?" A young woman approached, holding a tablet. Zoe, the first recipient of the Walter Reynolds Scholarship I had established at my community college alma mater. Now she was interning at my company while completing her business degree. "The foundation paperwork is finalized," she reported. "The Walter Network is officially established as a 501(c)(3). The first mentorship programs can begin this fall." I thanked her, feeling a sense of completion as this particular circle closed. The foundation would identify promising students facing family or financial limitations and provide not just scholarships but comprehensive mentoring from successful professionals who had overcome similar obstacles. The legacy Uncle Walter had quietly established would now help others find their paths. As lunch was served, I took a moment to observe the gathering from a slight distance. This reconstructed family, based on authentic connections rather than obligatory blood ties, represented a profound shift in my understanding of belonging. The painful Christmas revelation had ultimately catalyzed something healing, breaking open calcified patterns to allow new growth. My parents caught my eye from across the lawn, their expressions still carrying a mixture of amazement at the scope of my life and lingering discomfort at their place within it. Our relationship would never be simple or completely healed. Too many formative years had been shaped by their inability to see me clearly. But the pretense had fallen away, allowing for the possibility of more honest connection moving forward. After dessert was served, Uncle James tapped his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast to our host and to new beginnings." As glasses were raised, I felt a fullness in my chest that had nothing to do with pride in material success. The journey from overlooked child to self-sufficient woman had been difficult, but the destination offered something I hadn't fully anticipated: the freedom to define family on my own terms. To Bria, James continued, who reminded us all that our worth isn't determined by others' recognition, and that it's never too late to build the connections we truly need. Later, as guests began departing, my mother approached somewhat hesitantly. "Your home is beautiful," she said, glancing around at the tasteful decor and ocean views. "You've built an impressive life." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the compliment at face value rather than searching for hidden criticism as I might have in the past. "I've been thinking about what you asked at Christmas," she continued, "about what we had done specifically for you. I still don't have a good answer, and that keeps me awake at night." The simple acknowledgement represented more progress than months of defensive justifications. "It's not about keeping score now," I said. "It's about moving forward with more awareness." She nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know if I can change completely at my age, but I'm trying to see things more clearly, to see you more clearly." It wasn't a full reckoning or perfect resolution. Real life rarely offers those clean endings, but it was a step towards something more honest than the dynamic that had shaped my first 35 years. As the summer sun began its descent toward the horizon, I found myself alone on the deck with Uncle James, the last remaining guest. "Walter would be proud," he said, surveying the property and the successful woman I had become. "Not just of your material success, but of how you've handled all of this. Breaking generational patterns is the hardest work anyone can do." I thought about the parallel tracks my life had followed, the external achievement recognized by the business world and the internal journey toward authentic self-worth. Both had been necessary. Both had led me here. "The foundation will extend what Walter started," I said, "finding those who need support and validation, creating opportunities they might not otherwise have." James smiled. "The best revenge against limitation is to help others break free of theirs." That simple truth crystallized the lessons of my journey. The pain of childhood favoritism had driven me to prove my worth through achievement, but the healing had come through connection with others who understood, and through creating opportunities for those facing similar challenges. The wealth that had triggered such chaos at Christmas wasn't ultimately about money at all. It represented the freedom to define my own worth, to establish healthy boundaries, and to build connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation or advantage. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant orange and pink, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me even in my most successful professional moments. The little girl who had never been enough in her parents' eyes could finally rest. The woman I had become was more than enough, not because of bank accounts or business achievements, but because I had broken free from measuring my worth through others' recognition. The cycle was broken. A new pattern had begun. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family? How did you handle it? And what boundaries did you establish to protect yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more content like this. Don't forget to share with someone who might need to hear this message of self, worth beyond family validation. Thank you for listening, and remember, your value isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it.